Welcome back. It is always a good day when I wake up, I give thanks, and I know that today is a day that I am allowed to introduce you to remarkable individuals that have really amazing stories. My guest is Kim Cantin. I will get to her in just a quick sec. First, I just want to say thank you so much for all of the new listeners, the downloads. We're up to 15 countries now. Each week when I go on, I can see how many more people are tuning in and sharing and downloading the podcast. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks for the 5-star reviews for The Next Room, the book and the podcast, and the wonderful little community that we've built. It's not so little anymore, but so many wonderful people want to share. And I love how interactive the Next Room community is. So thank you for that. Kim Cantin is my guest today. She is the author of a brand new book. It's called Where Yellow Flowers Bloom. It is a true story of hope through unimaginable loss. And here it is. It has all my sticky notes for you YouTube fans. You can see that I absolutely devoured this story. To me, this story was so tragic, but yet Kim's tenacity, her strength, and her perseverance left me feeling hope. So without further ado, Kim, welcome to The Next Room.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be here.
Now, Kim, this is your first book. I mean, you were in the business world for 20 odd years. In 2017, there was just the largest wildfire in California called the Thomas Fire, which devastated the land up in, especially around Santa Barbara, Ventura County. The following January 9th in 2018, there was what is referred to international story, the Montecito mudslides. That is where this book was born from. So Kim, tell me what happened. Tell me about that fateful night on January 9th.
Sure. So, you teed it up really well. There had been a big wildfire, and when the wildfire roared through, it took all the foliage off the mountain, right? And so there wasn't things holding the big boulders on the hill. There's many 100-year-old down trees. So in January, there was some heavy rain forecasted. And we're like, oh, it's sad for those people up on the hillside. Their house is precarious. And we were down lower in the village. And we watched the Aware and Beware alerts that were on our phones from the fire. They would notify you what's going on. Like, do you have to evacuate? Because we evacuated 3 times. And so we knew heavy rain was coming. We were watching the news. We were getting our Aware and Beware, and we weren't in mandatory evacuation zone. And so we had our cars staged outside in sandbags, and we said, hey, we'll go to I had a hotel room reserved. We'll go to the hotel if it starts coming down heavy. And in the middle of the night, probably around 3 or 3:30 in the dark, my husband and I woke up to heavy rain on the roof. We heard it. So we got up quickly, and then we yelled for the kids, hey, let's get up, get out, and we'll go to the hotel room. And sadly, we didn't make it out before about a 30-foot wave came crashing down. A neighbor saw it. There was a curve in the creek, and it didn't make the curve, and massive boulders had jammed up under the underpass, and a 30-foot wave plumed up into the air with massive boulders the size of cars down trees, and it crashed down on my family's home with my family in it. And it was pretty terrifying and horrifying. And my husband and my son were killed. My dog was killed. The house completely washed away. Wasn't even any rebar left from the pool in the yard. And my daughter and I were swept away. I was swept away 2 football fields and found wrapped in electrical wires and injured in an intersection debris pile. And my daughter was washed away 100 yards. And she was buried alive for about 8 hours until she was freed from her entombment, which was about 20 feet deep, with 2 cars on top, part of a roof. And she miraculously had a pocket of air the size of about a half a volleyball right by her mouth. It wasn't by her belly button. It wasn't by her kneecap, but it was by her mouth. And there was a little tiny hole the size of a straw that went out to the outside. So she was able to breathe, but it was the night of the unimaginable.
Mm. And Lauren, at the time, your daughter was only 14 years old, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So here she is completely she was like bent almost in half under this pile of mud, and they're searching and searching and searching. All the Montecito Fire Department and Santa Barbara and everybody's looking for survivors. And they heard this little voice, and
Mm-hmm.
she was literally pulled out from this massive, like they talked to her the whole time. It was unbelievable heroics on their end, and also on Lauren's, to be able to stay calm. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how she did it. It's
She's the
amazing.
strongest person I know. That's what
Hmm.
she is. She's the strongest person I know.
So, okay, we have so much to unpack. So your husband has been swept away, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't find him right away. You're in one hospital,
Mm-hmm.
completely ripped apart. I mean, your
Mm-hmm.
pelvis,
Mm-hmm.
you had lacerations, you were a mess. So you're in one
Mm-hmm.
hospital. Lauren is cross town in another hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were told that she was alive and in this other hospital.
Yes.
When were you told about your husband? When were you told about Mark?
I think it was the next, I kind of get confused, but I think it was the next day or exactly the day after that. I went into surgery the first day I was so injured. So I was being operated on that night. I think the next morning they did a dry run, is what they told me, and figured out who needed to be in the room, like my parents, and my parents were flying in. They live in a different state, and my cousin flew in. And so they kind of did a dry run and let me know that my 90-pound beautiful Irish setter dog, Chester, was found 6 foot up a tree, crushed,
Mm.
and that he was gone. So that was a dry run. Like, does the priest need to be in the room, whatever. And so I think it must have been the next morning that someone from the sheriff's office came in first thing and said, and they had, the priest was there. Like, people were coordinating who needed to be there. And they said, they found Dave. And I said, alive? And he says, no, Kim, he's not alive. And he's dead. And I said, you sure it's him? I'm like, yeah, we made sure it was him.
Wow. So now you're in the hospital, you're ripped apart. Your husband, Dave, is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
And Lauren, is alive at a different hospital, but your son, who is 17, Jack, is missing.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where, I mean, we're just leading up to this story, but that's where you, the mom, full bore ahead, go into searching for your son,
Mm-hmm.
and did not give up at all. So let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about that, about, you finally get out of the hospital and you're at this point where you still need to find Jack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was a 30 square mile of mud and debris, and there was piles everywhere. And look, they tried. They had, I think 2,000 search dog hours, but the problem is that the piles, some of them were still really soaked wet, and that made it like quicksand. So they couldn't put the dogs on there. There was places that we found that had never been checked, and or homeowners who lost their home, because many homes were destroyed, were living elsewhere. And so they would have contractors, they were just hauling stuff away. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't be hauling this stuff away. There's 2 missing children, 2 missing bodies. And so I soon realized that if these kids were going to be found, I needed to be involved, because I was hearing it. I was hearing people say that they couldn't check that pile. I was meeting with neighbors who said that was never checked. I knew I had to engage, because I was terrified that he'd be hauled away or just left in debris.
Mm. And there was a baby girl too that had never been found.
Beautiful Lydia.
Yeah.
Beautiful baby Lydia. She was 2.
Wow. So all of a sudden you're in this massive pile of grief, and you're in full on search mode, and people came to your rescue. You had a team, you had people constantly showing up
Yeah.
for you to help you. And you put together what has kind of been a search party of sorts, that stood by your side and continued to help you. You literally were out there constantly
Mhm,
looking for
mhm.
anything, and you started finding things. So you got to tell me about, I mean, I've got so many sticky notes. Um, the quilt. Let's talk about this quilt, because
Sure.
you're a quilter. And
Mhm.
so as items were being found from all of these different homes, they had collections of different items that belonged to families that had lost everything. So you had a collection of Canton stuff, correct?
People would, yeah, well, when people found stuff, there was, it's called Montecito Lost and Found. People would post it and say, "Do you recognize it?" And I was very fortunate because there was a dad who was in the Scouts. His son was in the Scouts with Jack and my husband, who was a Scoutmaster. Um, he really took it upon himself to be the reciprocal. He would collect the stuff and he would have the Scouts clean off the stuff and put them in. There were like 6 Rubbermaid bins was what I got back from my house. 6 Rubbermaid bins, and they were like things like maybe Dave's scuba equipment, could be a plaque that had been in, that Dave had when he was 12 that was in the attic. So no dirty, damaged stuff. But gratefully they tried to get some stuff back. So in terms of the quilt, that was just a really fascinating find. I had made my husband a quilt for Christmas, and it had a silhouette on it of my son and my husband from their first scuba dive trip together when my son got his scuba certification at a scout camp. And so during the Thomas fire, I was really touched because Dave, we all evacuated and we thought the house could burn down. And when I opened the back of the car to get stuff into my friend's house in his truck, he had taken the wedding portrait of us and he took the quilts. And so for me, it made me love him all the more. He just grabbed things that he knew were irreplaceable. And so when we were out searching, we'd been searching, almost every week, every 2 weeks for, we'd gone on a year and a half and getting through all the piles and marking them. And I don't remember the exact date, but there was this really thick cement hard mud that filled up between a chain link fence that was about maybe 3 feet from the creek wall. And it was all filled with mud. And we're like, well, something could be in there, right? And so some of the Bucket Brigade volunteers were amazing. They came out, and there's one 70-year-old woman who'd had knee replacements and hip stuff. And she was throwing a pickaxe trying to get through this cement hard dirt wedged down in this chain link fence area. And Anne, who was a general contractor who helped me, was in the corner. And all of a sudden, Anne's like, I think I found a quilt. And I said, quilt. And I said, I make quilts. And I wanted something, I wanted one of the quilts back, and I wanted like Jack Stitch doll back. Like there's certain things I really wanted. And I go, what color is it? And she goes, it's got black and white checks on it. Well, I knew I kind of did that as a border on a lot of my quilts. And I go, then that's Cantin. And so she heaved up this 50-pound clunk of fabric and cement hard mud and put it on the ground. And we kind of like tried to open it up, and there it was. There was the very quilt that I had made Dave that he had taken with him during the fire evacuation. And it was the jolt of hope we all needed to keep going, saying, if this thing's here, then Jack's somewhere here too.
Wow. Wow, so much. Will you take me back to the intuition you had about getting a family portrait and also
Mhm.
getting a picture of yourself with your beautiful Irish setter Chester? And
Sure. So I will. It was interesting. We're all working busy lives, and it was a busy year in 2017. Both Dave and I worked. The kids were busy at school doing their thing and extracurricular activities, and life got past us. And so I hadn't done a family portrait for a few years. And Chester was 7. He was starting to get gray hair. I'm like, I haven't done really a good portrait of him. And he's just a gorgeous show quality, amazing Irish setter. And he was just fabulous. And so all of a sudden I kind of had this kind of overwhelming sense before Christmas, probably, a few weeks before Christmas, could have been like the end of November. But I said, I gotta get a family picture done. I just gotta get a family picture done. So I called my friend Medania. I said, Medania, I need to, let's just go out and take a family picture. So she took us to this open space where there's beautiful coastal oaks and there was beautiful, graceful boulders scattered around. And we took pictures there. And then when I got home, I'm like, I think I need pictures of my dog. And it was right around the holidays. So you don't want to be spending more money, right? Because you're already spending too much money, gift for
Right.
them, gift for me. And so I'm like, I got to go get pictures of him. So I had a professional pet photographer go take a bunch of pictures. And what was really kind of astonishing is that very picture. I'm so grateful we have our family picture that was done a few weeks before the tragedy. And when I had Medania, I said, where did you take that picture? It was kind of in the area that we were searching for Jack, right smack dab in the middle.
Mm. Wow. I keep getting goosebumps. Like, this story just is so multi-layered. And honestly, I'll put the link to purchase the book. It just came out. It's called Where Yellow Flowers Bloom. And it's so important that you're sharing this story, because it really is about you never, ever giving up. I mean, here you're completely racked. Your body has been put through hell. Your daughter, fortunately, is found alive, and her injuries were not nearly as severe as yours.
Mm-hmm.
You've had to bury your beloved husband, but you weren't allowed to bury your son because you didn't have his remains.
Mm-hmm.
What kept you going? I mean, so many times I can't even imagine, because it was years that you continued to search for anything at all of Jack so that you could have a proper burial for him next to your
Mm-hmm.
husband, Dave.
Yeah, I think the book kind of details a lot of the things that kept me going, right? The very unique synchronistic occurrences that left you astounded and were the jolts of hope. But I think fundamentally, I knew in my heart and in all my mama DNA that Jack didn't go to the ocean. I knew it. I knew he was somewhere in the mud. And I listened to that. I knew, like when they said, oh, just get in your head, he went to the ocean. I'm like, I don't see that. And it didn't make logical sense, right? Because I went 200 yards from the house. My daughter and the dog went 100 yards. We were in the house. Dave went further, but he wasn't in the house. He ran outside. So we had nothing to slow him down when the house is falling apart. So I'm like, Jack has to be pretty close. He has to be. I mean, we were all in the house. He's got to be within 400 or 500 yards. I mean, it just, and then, we got the university team involved, but it was my mama's intuition. And, we got these, as the book covers, all these really fascinating occurrences. And I think any parent, right? Any parent, mom or dad's going to do anything for their child. And even if your child's dead, to find them.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the connection of individuals, very talented individuals that have psychic gifts, because they were cropping up at an alarming rate. And what's wild is Suzanne Giesman, who also wrote a nice blurb on this. I love Suzanne. She's fantastic. And
phenomenal.
Yeah. And really, had this crazy naval career. And that's what's so, really, truly believable about what she does is she's, talk about a pivot, here's this naval officer,
Yeah, she was aide to the Joint Chiefs of Staff for
Right.
Bush. I think she was on Air Force One during 9/11. I mean, she was top of the heap.
Right. And then she started receiving messages from her, I think it was
Her daughter-in-law.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she took a major pivot. So Suzanne Giesman is involved. You mentioned Marissa. I have a feeling that's Marissa Ryan from Los Angeles.
A little different.
Yeah. Oh, little one. Okay. Different one to help you. But so talk to me about that, because you even said, you're pretty pragmatic. You weren't like all woo-woo at all. And then all of a sudden you're starting to receive these messages from individuals that say they can help you to locate back.
In the hospital when I was injured, I didn't know it, but my friend contacted Suzanne. She was trying to get on her list to have a reading herself. And Suzanne, is so, I think she's booked for life. I mean, she's so in demand. And so what I didn't know is my friend Marcia emailed and said, I think my friend's really going to need your help. This is what's happened. And graciously, Suzanne said, I'll get her on the books within, 90 days. And so I had a reading with her, and it was, there was so much evidence. She's an evidentiary medium, so she'll show evidence. So there's nothing on the web she could have found, but the clear evidence that it was clearly Dave and Jack. And then I said, can I ask questions? She goes, sure. I said, Jack, where are you? I knew which question I wanted. Where are we? Where are you? We're looking. And he's like, I can't see it like that, but Suzanne stayed, she was just really gracious to me. And then she was driving through town. She speaks nationally and internationally, and she happened to be driving near us. And she's like, I'll swing by and walk the area with you. So her and her husband did that, I was grateful. And, we stayed in touch. But the nice thing is I didn't really know of intuitives before. And when this happened, they just kind of came into my life, like Marcia reaching out to Suzanne, right? Or I just, by happenstance, learned about Catherine Weisenberg, who's an author of Beyond Ever After, a heart-to-heart journey of death and the afterlife. And in a store, they said, do you know Catherine Weisenberg? You got to know her. I said, why is that? And they said, because she was the back channel to some of the first responders that found two of the victims. She had clues and it helped them find two of the victims. I said, well, I need to know her then. But these people, I was very, very selective. And kind of, I had a filter. If you're asking me for money to pay for it, I'm not doing it. Not that I couldn't, but I wanted to know the purity of intent. And the purity of intent was, there were two missing children.
Right.
Children are such a sacred class that if there's any reason to use whatever talents you have, if it's sewing talents, if it's being a locksmith talent, whatever your talent is, use your talents for good to help in this higher purposed find, which is there's missing children.
Right.
And so I met with a core group of, I had just kind of serendipity, people came into my life and they were very, very helpful. And there was one lady who tried to call and pitch her thing. And I said, well, I'm just telling you, I'm not paying for this because it's a sacred thing. It's for missing children. And I said, but I'm going to write a book, so if you help me, I'll certainly, recognize you in the book. She goes, when you write your book, I'll tell you the information. And I'm like, click. I said, click, 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 click.
Yeah.
Because that's not, and that's what you have to do is just listen to your gut. There's some really, really reputable, just like in any profession, right? There's reputable bookkeepers, there's reputable accountants, doctors, and then doctors, and then of course in the mix, there's a few bad eggs. So I just kept to my core group who I felt good with, who were using their talents for good. And it was helpful.
Yeah, super helpful. Tell me about Dave's artwork that was found, because that was, and by the way, in Where Yellow Flowers Bloom, Kim has all kinds of cool pictures. So you're going to see the family portrait, and it kind of opens you up, and you allowed us to journey with you through this story. And I cried a lot, but I also smiled a lot too, because you share so much of your soul as a mother and as someone who cares so deeply. I mean, you were not just searching for Jack, you were looking for baby Lydia too.
Yeah.
So tell me about Dave's artwork, because I was like, what?
That was pretty remarkable. So Grant, the scout dad, he would find stuff or people would give it to him, and he'd keep it at his family's house with he and his wife would gratefully store it in their living room, these 6 bins. And one was a leather art folio that had a zipper, which I never really saw. I think Dave must have had it in the attic, and it was from high school. Wow. And he had some beautiful, and they were in little plastic sleeves, large, probably 24 by 48, beautiful drawings, chalk drawings. And they were signed 1986, Dave Cantin. And I said, these are beautiful. So I took down the folio and to a framer, and I said, can we frame some of these? Because I want to use them as artwork in my new home to have a little bit of Dave around. And it was really lovely it's lovely to have them. I have them in my home.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's see. This was day 409. You found something of your son's.
Mm.
Kind of part of you as well, obviously.
That was unbelievable. It was Valentine's Day. And it was, so a little over a year, Valentine's Day, right? And I'm in the car, I'm driving to LAX with my daughter, and a text goes off by one of the other survivors of the mudslide. And she goes, check the Montecito Lost and Found site, that's posting things. Someone just posted an ultrasound image. And I'm like, huh? Okay. So I went and looked at it, and my eyes just almost came out of my head, because it wasn't just any ultrasound picture. It was the ultrasound of Jack in my belly, and it was in perfect condition. And it was 409 days after the mudslide. And it was found wedged between two rocks by Butterfly Beach in the elements, in a little plastic sleeve that I'd had it put in the hope chest in his probably baby book. And it was in perfect condition.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wow. It was
That,
wow.
yeah. So
Wow.
every time these things would happen, it's almost like, you were following a trail of signs, and it had to kind of revive you and give you a little bit more hope, because
It did. It gave us all hope. We're like,
yeah,
what on earth? And it's
what is
coming, and
going on?
it's like, it's just saying, keep going. If that was
Yeah.
found, keep going.
Yeah. And I love this line from the book. It says, rain reveals what is hidden. So, it's devastating mudslide, but then it gets dry and hot in California,
Yes.
as we all know. And so then everything gets baked in. And then after we would get another rainstorm is when you would gather your crew and get back out. And please tell me about page 194. And I'm just going to give you the word costume.
Okay. A couple of the intuitives had mentioned early on that something around Superman would be pretty important, right? In finding Jack where he is. Like, okay, he loved Superman. When a little guy, I'd always have him in his little Superman Halloween costumes, if it's Superman or if it's Mr. Incredible, whatever, he's always doing that. And we had been by this one area of the creek over and over and over again, 100 times. But a rain had happened, and rain reveals things. And we saw some fabric jutting out at the side wall of the creek, and it was red and blue. And we're like, that looks like a Halloween costume. And as we gently kind of removed it in the caked on debris that had molded to the side wall of the creek, there it was. It was Jack's Superman Halloween costume.
And you knew it was Jack's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's a picture of it. It's laden in the mud here. And then on the opposite page, you have cute little Jack in his costume. Yeah. Wow. Kim, it just, for you to be able to tell this story too, what got you to this point where you could actually write this incredible memoir? Because it's according to you, and were you keeping notes about everything? Because it's pretty extraordinary how you pulled this all together. And I'm here to tell you, I read every day, and this is a very, very well done book. It is such a story of just your perseverance and your mama bear coming out, and you never, ever, ever giving up. But it's also beautiful because you've created this life for you and Lauren. So how are you able to get this all down?
Well, as we were doing the search, I had a binder, right? So I'd keep down like dates and when things were found, or I'd be emailing the sacred search team. Here's what we did. So I had I could piece together when things happened and some of the big highlights. And then it was really around COVID when things got really quieter for all of us, right? And we're all staying in our homes. And I'm like, I got to write this down because I want if I am blessed with grandchildren, I'd love them to hear the story from me of what happened before I forget the details, right? Because if you go out, you might forget some of the details. So it started that way. And then the Sacred Search team would say, when we found the quilt or when we found the ultrasound, whatever, saying, you have to write this stuff down. You just have to. It's just too astonishing. And so it was a combination of both. And then as I did it, I realized it was a reflective process. I saw myself from the real desperate grief at the beginning. And as I was marching through it, I got to more peaceful adaptation, integration. I don't say acceptance because acceptance seems okay, and it's not okay that they're gone at all, but to adapt into it, right? And then I'm like, okay, so I'm seeing myself shift in my grief journey. Maybe this could help someone else who's going through grief or really just a hard time, to say, when you're going through hell, keep going, just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So, will you share the lipo story? Because I was like, okay, what is happening here? This is
I was saying the same thing.
insane.
I was saying the same
Insane.
thing.
Okay.
So we had some historical remains dogs coming in from Northern California, and they're different from normal search and rescue dogs. Historical remains look for bodies buried for a long time. They even looked for Thomas Jefferson's buried brother in Monticello. They just went out to search for, they were out a couple of years earlier looking for Amelia Earhart in the South Pacific. Okay, so they're looking for older remains. They really focus in on the bones of humans, not the flesh, not the fat or whatever. Sure. And they can, but it's of older remains. And so there was an expert in a university, and we're like, okay, well, how do we best prepare the soil? It had been probably a year and a half by then, maybe getting on 2 years. I don't remember. But this expert said, well, it should be a little bit moist. So the Montecito Fire Group helped us because I think it was September, it was getting warm, and like, we got to moisten the soil. So they did some of their training out there with hoses, which they need to do. And they gratefully moistened the soil for us. Montecito Fire's always been rock solid. And I said, what else should we do? And they're like, well, you should test the dogs to make sure they're good dogs, that their nose is working. And I said, how do I do that? And he goes, well, if you get a 1 to 5 year old human bone and just bury it maybe 30 feet away, they should find it within 5 minutes. I said, if I have a 1 to 5 year old human bone, I'm going to be arrested. Like, you don't have those things, right? Right. And I said, what else can I do? And he said, well, get some lipo, get some fat. And I said, well, that's not a problem, because my husband had been working in medical device, and at one time he was managing the ultrasonic liposuction devices, and he knew a lot of surgeons. So I'm like, oh, let's call one of them. So after procedure, maybe I can get some fat. And they said, just put some of the fat in a little like glass jar and put in a clean makeup sponge with it so it'll soak up, and then you could hide the makeup sponge. And it sounds simple enough. So I called, and the one was like, that's an ethical violation. You can't, take someone else's procedure fat. I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay. I did well. And I knew the university who was helping us, they were certified in, I think it's biohazard class B or C, whatever it is. They were qualified to handle it if we got it. So I called this other doctor, and he's like, so, can you come by tomorrow? And I'm thinking, well, maybe he's going to give me some of the fat from someone, maybe. And he goes, no, you're going to hop on that table. So he goes, do you think you have any fat? And I'm like, I know I do. And so he was really a kind man, and he hopped me on the table on a Friday afternoon. I lifted up my shirt. He put some lidocaine in by my belly button and liposuction in, and it hurt because I wasn't put under like they normally would. Sure. Like, I really hurt, but they, I would have wanted, if it didn't hurt, I would have said, keep going. But I said, stop. They got exactly what they needed. And then we made the samples, and we tested the dogs, with the samples, and we proved that they were really hitting on what they should be hitting on.
Wow. Could you tell me about, because this story is just has so many fingers, but Lauren, your daughter, is quite a singer,
Hmm.
and here's, this young woman is showing remarkable strength to be able to stand up and sing on a national stage.
Hmm.
And you were interviewed, Ellen DeGeneres had you on, which she's also a
Hmm.
Montecito. So let's talk about Lauren and her music and what she's been doing, because I just love that angle. I love that she wanted to follow through and do that and had seemingly no nerves about it.
She's the strongest person I know. And for her, when she sings, it's grounding, and she feels her feet on the ground. And she knew she was invited to sing with, some pretty amazing people, Katy Perry or Brad Paisley or David Foster. And what it was doing, and Kenny Loggins, right? It was at benefits that were benefiting disaster relief to help the community. And so she wanted to do that. She
Mm.
wanted to give back and do that. And when the community heard her sing, um, they were healing through it. They're like, if she can, afterward, they watched her come out of her entombment on television, right? And then they see her singing, Rise Up or from Andra Day or Defying Gravity from the Broadway hit Wicked, right? Um, Powerful,
Yeah.
powerful and healing. And so she was healing from it, which is why I said, you can do it if you want to do it. It was giving her healing. It was healing the community, and it was raising money for disaster relief, because it was a community disaster, not just a Canton disaster. It was a community disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. As I'm reading the book, I would stop because I didn't know Lauren was a singer. And so I would stop and then I would Google and then I would go watch the videos because they're all
Hmm.
over YouTube. And then I felt so bonded with her. And then I thought, wow, this young lady is remarkable. I mean, she
She
was
is.
buried,
Hmm.
literally could have been buried alive. So
Yeah.
talk to me about those feelings about you and Lauren being saved. And did you have some survivor's guilt too? Because people talk about that, here your husband's gone, your son is gone, and you and your daughter are alive.
Because um, we were in it when the house was being destroyed and mud was rolling in. I think we both have a real awareness that it was sheer luck and a lot of, I think, a higher power, God saving us, that why we're alive. There's no reason Lauren and I should be alive.
Yeah.
So because we saw that it was just miraculous that we survived what we did. We were swimming with boulders the size of VW bugs, and broken shard from glass from all the glass windows of houses being destroyed. Right. So I think for me, I don't think I have survivor's guilt. I have a profound gratefulness, to God for saving my life. And I've told Lauren, Lauren, we were saved. I think we're saved for a reason. We have to do something good. With this, it's like the Frankel book. What is it? Man's Search for the Meaning of Life, if I had it right. And he talks about if you've had such a major tragedy or something, by putting meaning to it, it gives it a purpose, right? So it just didn't happen. And Dave and Jack were lost to heaven. How can you put purpose to it? So for Lauren, it could be the singing. She's touching people's hearts, right? Maybe this book is part of my purpose. If it can
Mm,
help even one person who's going through a tough time,
right.
maybe that's it. But no, I don't, because we saw how we all, each one of us would have wanted to survive. And sadly, Dave and Jack didn't, or the dog, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they didn't try to survive,
Right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. From January 9th, 2018 to the day that you found some of Jack,
Mm-hmm.
5/30/21, you never, ever, ever gave up. And
Mm-mm.
I just my heart is so fully supportive of you and your journey and what you've done. And this book is really beautiful. I hope you just sell tons and tons of copies. And you know what else I really loved, Kim, was I love that you named every single person, because 23 people actually died
that
during,
night.
yeah, that night. And
And
that's
Corey, and then there was a firefighter who died in the Thomas fire, right?
that's right. Smoke
And so
inhalation.
he,
Yeah.
but he died and he left a toddler and a pregnant wife.
Yeah. He was only 32. Yeah, I love that you have in memory, and you have all of their names and their ages listed, because it was such a huge story. And I remember, I lived in Santa Barbara for 7 years, and I have such an affinity for the community and the people, and there's such a warmth and generosity. And it's a very small community too. It's not it's
Everyone
not.
knows everyone.
Yes, it's not Los Angeles. It is completely small, and you just got so much loving support. Tell us the cute story about, well, not cute, but about Rob Lowe, because
Oh,
when I was reading that chapter, I'm like, right on, because I love him. Like I just, as a fan, I'm like, he just seems like a really good dude, very
he's a
genuine.
good human. He's a good human.
Yes.
He's a kind
Yeah.
human. He's so
Yeah.
yeah. So he was looking to do a documentary, him and his son, and so I got a call saying, "Can we interview for the mudslide?" And I said, "I kind of really don't want to talk about the mudslide anymore, but I'm
Right.
looking for my son if he wants to help with that." And so the director
Good
called
for
him,
you.
yeah, and called Rob, and he's like, "Okay, he's in." So he's like, "I'll come help look in the search," and I'm like,
Wow.
"Great, I need more help." And so God love him, he came and he got down into the creek and he found immediately my husband's poker chips. He found his ties. And then we went down just a little further and he found my husband's Red Sox jersey. My husband was a big Red Sox baseball fan.
Wow.
And he goes, wow. He goes, because he's like, why do you keep searching? And then after that, because he had found probably within 30 minutes, he had found those three things. He goes, I get it. Yeah. He's like, it just took there was so much debris still. I mean, it went, I think I heard a statistic. It was 50,000 truckloads of mud was hauled out of there, 50,000 truckloads. And there's still, it's not down to grade.
Yeah.
There's still stuff out there. And so what I was really touched with Rob is, sure, he was, working on a documentary, but he was coming out as a neighbor who was helping. And he's a kind human.
Yeah. Good for you, Rob Lowe. That made me smile. Weeks before, I'm not sure if it was weeks before, on Jack's Instagram, he had a famous quote. You share that with us?
Yeah, which I didn't have Instagram, but his friends told me it was, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And that was really kind of prophetic, right?
Yeah. Mm. Wow. Kim, I want to reach through Zoom and give you a big hug.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so grateful for you to share. It's Where Yellow Flowers Bloom. I will have a link to the book, and I'll even put some other information in there on how you can contact Kim and support her in this.
Yeah, they can get it on Amazon pretty easy.
Okay, awesome. And reviews really matter. Being an independent.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very,
Thank
very
you.
helpful. Is there anything in closing that you would like to share that maybe I didn't ask you and that you would like to share with the audience?
No, other than, look, if you know someone who's going through a really tough time, maybe give them the book, see if it helps them, right? And I would say, listen to your intuition, right? I had an intuition. Jack didn't go to the ocean. And then when you're going through a tough time, just, keep marching forward. It's going to get lighter.
Well, that's beautiful. Lovely words. And I do want to say I absolutely respected what you and Lauren did when it did come time to pay your respects and bury your son and her brother. You did it, just the two of you.
Yeah.
So
there'd been so much media. We just needed it just us.
Good for you. You're a very strong woman, and big hats off to you. And thank you for taking the time for the Next Room listeners.
Thank you.
I know they're really going to enjoy this interview, and I encourage them to go buy the book. So it's Where Yellow Flowers Bloom. It's a true story of hope through unimaginable loss. Kim Cantin is my guest today. The Next Room audience, thanks you for coming on the show. To me, death is dinner conversation, not always a comfortable topic, but I love to cover everything from grief to green burial practices to the afterlife. And I think we've kind of touched on almost everything today. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you. Take care now.